It's really easy to get booze, you know. It's not hard at all. You go tap on somebody's shoulder and it's really easy. It's kind of sick.
We had been drinking like beer, hard liquor, and smoked pot. There was also coke there and LSD.
Oh, I don't know. A lot of people just think that, you know, they're better than that nothing would happen to them.
You know, if you're smart and say, well, I'm only going to have a couple beers and drive, then you're okay.
I think really a lot of it comes from high school because it's peer pressure.
They have serious accidents. They're involved with alcohol, drug abuse of one kind or another, and they have these terrible, senseless tragedies on the highway, and it's such a waste.
It's just a fact. It is a waste. You know?
It's real sad. It is a waste.
14 young people between 16 and 19 years old die each day because of automobile accidents. And the majority of those accidents also involve alcohol. Everyone agrees there is a problem, but everyone also blames someone else. In the next hour, we'll talk to a 20-year-old woman, a paraplegic since a drinking driving accident 3 years ago, who's working to build a life for herself apart from her wheelchair. We'll meet a Washington State trooper who's trying to reach kids with a life-saving message about drinking and driving. We'll share the grief of a Kirkland family who's still in shock over the loss of their son. We'll go to Harborview Trauma Center and talk to a doctor who fights to save the lives of victims of drunk driving tragedies. We'll hear from the kids themselves. Why does it happen? What can be done to stop it? And finally, we'll follow the thread of one tragic accident that took the lives of 4 young people in Bellevue little more than 2 months ago. Everyone agrees there is a problem. Everyone points the finger of blame at someone else. But no one disagrees with the fact that the problem always starts at the same point, when the kid gets the keys to the car. The problem starts with the kids and the keys to the car, and it grows with the use of booze or drugs. The tragedy is that it takes the finality of death to get people to finally admit the size of the problem and start to do something about it. On October 24th, Puget Sound residents were forced to deal with the realities of that tragic mix of risk-taking teens, booze, and a car, when 4 young people died in Bellevue. The story of that tragedy when we return. Bellevue police officer R.D. Stover was the investigating officer for the October 24th accident that snuffed out 4 young lives.
We determined that they had been to several parties and a considerable amount of drinking involved. And they had left the last party minutes, actually, before this accident happened. I would say less than a half hour before this crash happened. And they were, as previously reported to us, squirreling around in the parking lot at the Metro Park and Ride.
The beginning of that tragic night was typical. If it's a typical Friday or Saturday night, there are at least 2, probably more, parties going on. And of course there will be beer. Someone can always get it for you. If it's a typical Friday or Saturday night, it means activity for the police. Answering complaint calls from neighbors that lead to busting up some of those parties. Or worse, answering a call for assistance at a car accident. Because if it's a typical Friday or Saturday night, there will be a car accident involving teens in our state. The odds are better than usual that it will be a fatal accident.
And they have these terrible, senseless, somebody may be maimed or injured or disfigured for the rest of their life.
What can the police do? Washington State Trooper Dave Miller thinks it's important for the police to be tough right from the start.
The first arrest that we make, or the first stop that we make on them in their car, is to try to get them to understand that, hey, they have to realize that they're part of the adult world out here now, driving their car around, and they're going to have to obey the laws just like everybody else. And if we can get that impression on them early enough in life, then maybe they'll remember that the rest of their driving career.
The other frustration for the police is the feeling that the courts are too lenient towards juveniles.
I'm not saying that we need to convict every juvenile who has beer. But when the court goes so far as to dismiss the cases because of legal technicalities, he can beat the system, he can beat the patrol, he can beat the police department, he can drink and get away with it. If he denies knowledge, he denies possession, and it's not his car or whatever reason, and the courts will help him. And then pretty soon we'll find that young man smashed against a tree someplace with a .15 blood count on him. And one of the reasons will be because he could get away with it. Because nobody has the intestinal fortitude to stand up and say, young man or young lady, you're guilty.
And the first Kirtland officer went to investigate and drove right to the entrance of the parking lot itself. The car that was being driven very erratically at that point momentarily slowed down or stopped, and then accelerated past the Kirtland officer and left at a very high rate of speed southbound on 108th. The car continued southbound. The roadway at that point goes underneath the 520, Highway 520 overpass, and the roadway curves to the left at that point. And the Kirtland officer continued on and rounded the curve also and saw the crash, saw the car after it had crashed. The car that had crashed was sitting on its top at that point. There were still several occupants inside the car. So the Kirtland officers immediately called for the fire department, both an engine and aid units, and Medic 1.
Those Medic 1 units were part of the nationally acclaimed emergency medical system in the Puget Sound area. Harborview Trauma Center in Seattle is the heart of that system.
There are times in this emergency room when everything that's brought in here is alcohol related. The younger drinkers are usually passengers in automobiles. Sometimes they are the drivers of automobiles. They break their legs, they break their backs, they break their pelvises, they compress their abdomens. Our whole approach, of course, is to make sure that we discover all those problems, frequently because the kids are unconscious, secondarily because they're too drunk to be able to be examined.
Dr. Kopas thinks the problem starts with society's attitude toward drinking.
And it's become socially fashionable to be drunk at times, to operate vehicles when you're drunk.
Most parents are surprised when medical professionals tell them the blood alcohol level of their child shows he's been drinking, and probably for a long time.
He's got a high level. It may be an indication that he's built up a good tolerance and has been drinking for some time. This often surprises the parents. They are sort of disbelieving that their child could have been drinking, and we have to convince them that it's true.
Dr. Kopas feels there should be a stronger response toward teenage drinking.
There's a double standard. The teenager is dealt with as if he were naughty, and the adult is dealt with as if he needs medical assistance. And the unfortunate thing is being unable to deal with the kids with the same strength and purpose that we deal with the adults.
Dealing with the busted up bodies of kids who drink and drive is one of the toughest things these doctors face.
The natural tendency when one sees a destroyed teenager is to just vomit and say, oh my goodness gracious, I do not think I can continue to deal with this. And then know that you've done it before and will have to do it again and simply go through it.
At that time, we determined that there were 4 other occupants in the car, and they were all dead at the scene. There were some tire marks in the roadway that we noted and recorded their locations. Because of the extreme speed of the vehicle, centrifugal force takes over at that point. The car hit the roadway and hit that dirt embankment with the right front corner of the vehicle. and it immediately, from that impact, flipped over onto its top.
In accidents like this one, after a call for medical aid, a call also goes out to a tow company. How does it feel to deal with broken cars and broken bodies?
Really, at the time, you don't think, but afterwards you do stop and think. And then you talk to people you know and show the kids that you know what can happen.
Ken decided to go beyond showing just the people he knew. Newport High School wanted a wreck to show during the Washington State Patrol's presentation on drinking and driving.
Well, we took possession of the car shortly afterwards. We talked to the family. We brought the car to Newport. And once it went there, other schools started calling. So we've taken it around to several schools within the area. There's been about 6 tow companies involved in taking this car around.
The sight of that mangled 71 Dodge Charger is getting reactions from high school students. We'll hear from them, as well as from the family of the driver of that car. We'll see what the police are doing as a follow-up to the accident. And we'll meet a survivor of another drinking-driving tragedy when we return.
Also, during this time, we were trying to determine who the people were that were involved. The survivor told me who the driver of the vehicle was. We found out that there were 3 young female victims deceased at the scene also. The medical examiner's office was called. They came to the scene, and the bodies were released to them, and positive identification was made by the parents at the medical examiner's office.
Tragically, the parents are the last to know. The family of Vic Carr, the driver in the Bellevue accident, talked with Julia Clark about that awful morning.
That's the most horrible thing I've ever had to do in my life. I had no idea on... That's just exactly the way you see it on television. When we're in the movies, you go there, you stand before it, and they just pull that sheet back. He was the exact way that he was when they pulled him out of that car.
The Carr family not only suffered through the pain of losing Vic, but also felt the burden of the 3 other teenagers who lost their lives that night.
My dad walked up the stairs and he had tears just streaming down his face. Dora, my mom and I, we just screamed, you know, a frightful scream. But in that 45 minutes that we were here, we were praying that if it was Vic, that he went alone.
We didn't want anybody else hurt.
That was all, you know, that we kept saying, is that he was alone. And because we wouldn't want anybody to go through this. God, it hurts so bad. You know, the feeling you have inside is so painful. And if people don't, I mean, if people can't understand that, then it's not going to, you know, end here.
I had, you know, the articles would come in the paper. I was the one to show Vic, this car is wrecked and that car is wrecked and this boy is paralyzed from an accident. And you try, you talk, and still, you know, the last thing was, I'm not going to have an accident.
You know, now it's over, the accident happened, and I think the most important thing is that nobody gives up. The schools, they get more involved in it. They say something to the kids, you know, if everyone is saying, your parents, the police, the media, you know, if there's always something on it, that's always going to be in your head. You know, no matter how strong-headed you are, it's always going to be there.
It's so final. There's nothing beyond. You can't undo any of this. And that life that was there is gone to us forever. The kids have to be made to realize that this isn't just a joyride. This could be the end.
Four lives were snuffed out in an instant on October 24th. Vic Carr, Heather Jarvis, Kelly Knapp, Don Cathy Dennis. Miraculously, Terry Martin survived. There were unexpected reactions to the accident. Mike Conklin and Carlos Del Valle report.
It was called the worst accident in Bellevue's history. Never had so many lives been snuffed out at once. But more than that, the tragedy outraged the community. Officer R.D. Stover conducted the most exhaustive investigation of a fatal accident ever performed by Bellevue Police. He included a detailed account of where each of the victims had been the night before the crash. He tracked and found those who bought or gave the teenagers their beer. He even went one step further to find where some of their beer had been purchased and who sold it to them. The police were already under pressure to crack down on drunk driving, but since the accident, they've been issuing citations with a vengeance. 5 friends of the dead teens were accused of supplying alcohol to minors. The owner of the store where they bought their beer was charged with selling to minors. Penalties could include 60 days in jail and $500 fines. The war against drunk driving is spread throughout the Puget Sound area. Tacoma, Everett, and other communities have put emphasis patrols on the streets to nab DWIs. Recently, Tacoma police arrested more than 150 drunk drivers in a single weekend. And because of the accident, the police chiefs of Bellevue, Kirkland, and Redmond jointly announced the area's most extensive crackdown. But officers throughout the region are keeping a sharp eye out for youths with liquor and adults who drive while drunk.
I tell you at this time that you're under arrest for driving while intoxicated. I want you to come on over here. Me.
You have the right at this time to attorney of your own choosing and to have him present before saying or signing anything.
Officers want to know where they got their liquor. Store clerks who sell to minors will be cited. Restaurants and bars which serve drinks to customers who are already drunk will be reported to the state liquor board. It is a first step in a major effort to try and stop accidents like this from happening again.
For anything to work, especially when it means reaching kids, a person has to care. The State Troopers slideshow called Friday Night Live is showing, or at least trying to show, kids that State Troopers care. Trooper Henson, who talks and stages the show, has told teenagers he wants to be straight with them. Henson knows he can't stop kids from drinking and drug abuse, but more than anything, he wants them to know the dangers of entering a vehicle while intoxicated.
You're not going to stop drinking, but hopefully we can alter some patterns as to the style and the manner that they go through and keep away from the automobile.
Really makes me wonder because I could have been dead a lot of times, and it's really going to make me think.
What do you plan on doing now about it?
Well, it's going to make me, I'm sure, not drink as much when I go out and party. And when I get a ride home, it's going to be by somebody who I know can drive.
Why can't you call up your mom if you're too drunk? I mean, they know what you're doing, or most parents do.
My mom would be happy.
Yeah, my mom would be very happy rather than me wrecking her car and killing myself and 5 other friends.
That sounds good. Have a number, any place. Doesn't have to be a friend, just like she said, right here at the school. Because, you got all sorts of programs where you call in for help.
Well, there is a group of students who want to help. Auburn High School is trying to start a hotline for drunks. The project is called Stay Alive.
We were just speaking on a friendship term to the rest of the class. If you're ever in a predicament, my name's in the book. And I started to think about that, and I thought, well, geez, couldn't there be some sort of hotline or something for people who really are in a predicament, who really would consider calling somebody but don't have anyone to call besides their parents?
We want to keep all of our students alive, and that's why I joined.
There are kids in this program who have a more personal involvement, like Joe Brizendine.
I had a brother, Tim. He was 12 years old, 11, and some lady was at a party and she got drunk and she was speeding and she killed him and 2 of his friends. She was drunk.
The family suffers the most when there is a fatal accident. Kids seem to understand this much better than I had anticipated. Kids ask, why wasn't the driver more responsible? Well, the fact is, alcohol is the leading cause of fatal teenage accidents. It's also true that teenage drivers more often kill other people than themselves. That makes the comment one young man made even more fitting. How could they be so selfish? And what a waste.
For some survivors of this type of accident, life as they knew it is over. Susan Pollard is a survivor.
I went to a party, and I had just met 2 of these girls. I'd only known them for about a month. And we had been drinking like beer, hard liquor, and smoked pot. There was also Coke there and LSD. You know, my friend that was driving, she had done all that. And I'd just been drinking. See, we were supposed to go make a phone call down about a block away. Well, the car was parked in the opposite direction. She went across the street and across somebody's yard and wiped out this fence. And then we drove about, we ran 5 stop signs, got on this other road, and that's when she lost control. All I remember is when they were pushing me while I was on the bed into the emergency room. And I was coming out of the shock, and I said, what happened, about 5 times. And they said that I had gotten in a wreck. I remember him saying, well, you broke your back in 4 places, we have to operate. And I said, operate?
Susan Pollard was just 17 when she found herself a paraplegic. After 3 years in a wheelchair, she's working to walk again with the help of a therapist.
Real sad. It is a waste that these people have to come in and have to learn a whole different way of life. Because a lot of the injuries were stupid mistakes by themselves, made by themselves a lot, and they know it.
And it scares me.
Why does it scare you?
Just because I've been sitting in that chair for 3 years, and for a long time I didn't do anything about it because I wasn't mentally ready to. But at 17 years old, I don't think anybody's ready for something like that. The only thing I resent is that I was so young and I had to grow up so quick. It took away my youth, I feel. And all because of drinking. It isn't worth it at all.
Still bitter?
In a sense, I am. Just.
Why are you bitter for?
Myself. Just because I feel I let it happen. I don't know, it was a careless accident. It shouldn't have happened.
But it did.
But yeah, it's too late now.
Sue says she lost her best friend. She just couldn't handle seeing her this way.
I wasn't ready for that. I'm sure they probably didn't know what to say. They didn't want to say the wrong thing. But what can you say? I'm sorry it happened. People, they just don't understand, really. But, I mean, I was the same way before. But I'm sure they think that it could be them. Because I was, one that, it couldn't happen to me. It's the way everybody is, I think.
I don't know, in this case it took 4. And where could they have gone had they lived? What was in store for them? What experiences, what contributions could they have made to the world,
So in terms of education, everybody's got to work at it. And everybody has to kind of be willing to say, if Joe has a better idea, maybe I ought to use it, because we're killing other people, or we're allowing them to kill themselves.
It's so final. There's nothing beyond. You can't undo any of this. And that life that was there is gone to us forever.